You're good.
Thumbs up. Let's do this.
Let's do this.
We're in for a wild night.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 133 of Born to be Wild, a Wild exclusive Hearthstone podcast where we have fun hanging out with friends, talking about the Wild format of Hearthstone and spotlighting members of the Wild community. I'm your host, as always, Nate Wolf. It is great to be back on another beautiful Friday evening here, joining you from my mom and dad's house in Orange County, California. And joined by some very good friends. Very happy to be here tonight, and still a little bit discombobulated from all the moving. Probably will be a little out of sorts for the next month or so until we're in our new place. But very happy to be here tonight. We've got a lore episode for you. We're going to be talking about the one and only Yogg-Saron, and joined by some very good friends here. So I will introduce them all in good order. So Hydralisk, welcome back. How are you?
Hey, thank you. Very glad to be here once again. Hydralisk coming at y'all from Xeris, somewhere in the middle of the Milky Way. I'm glad to be here after a very long week of work and studying, and all work and no play makes Hydralisk a very dull Zerg. So I'm really happy to be here with all of my great friends, and we can learn about some things tonight. So I'm stoked.
Yay! Blutrane, welcome back. It's always great to have you, and I wanted to say a very gigantic thank you for hosting the show tonight. My current internet situation is like really terrible Wi-Fi, and I cannot stream the show for probably another month or so. So Sheep has been doing it recently, and we'll get everyone sorted out soon. But I really appreciate you coming through. It's always great to hang out and chat, but also for hosting tonight. It's a huge favor, and I definitely owe you. So welcome back, though. It's great to have you. How are you?
I'm great. 2 weeks in a row. First time co-hosting a lore episode with Goliath. While we've had the pleasure of interacting a few times in the past, the first time we're doing it in an official capacity. So, and I just broke Schmoopy Daddy's pyramid in the chat using the official Born to be Wild account. So suck it.
Got him. Oh, that's great. We have 2 Canadians in one night. That's incredible.
2 weeks in a row.
Wow.
I know.
Well, very happy to have you back. And I wanted to welcome back our returning Loremaster Goliath the Dwarf. Thank you so much. It's great to have you back as always. And we'll hear some great stories tonight. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good overall, I'd say. I am currently dealing with some 19 degrees Fahrenheit weather here in Cascade, Iowa. And I am all bundled up in my nice warm fleece sweatshirt and sweatpants, and just very much focused. I fought on turning the heat up in my home for a long time because utility bills, but this past week it was just like, no, I can't do this anymore. It's officially the heater season.
Wow. Yeah, no, don't freeze. Yeah, you gotta keep warm.
I was trying to see if I could see your breath there, but
Nope.
The cold, right? It's just in time for March of the Lich King.
Yes, they did a perfect timing with that. I'm pretty sure that was intentional.
it must have been.
That's funny. Sheep will not be with us tonight, doing some family stuff, but Sheep should be back next week, and then we'll be back to business as usual. But I'm still happy to be here with all of our friends, and we've got a great show for you tonight. We'll jump into the news, try to kind of blast through it relatively quickly because we've got a lore episode, and we want to give that the focus of our attention tonight.
So for those of you joining us for the first time, welcome aboard. Let me briefly explain how this show works. We record this podcast live every Friday evening at twitch.tv/borntobewildhs, and the video version of this podcast is then posted to YouTube shortly thereafter. Audio versions are also distributed to all podcast apps. However, you're watching, listening, or absorbing via osmosis this podcast today, thank you. Yes, you.
Yes, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Extra big special thank you to the folks who are watching us live on Twitch right now. It's really fun to interact with everybody live in chat while we're doing the show, and hearing everybody's, seeing everyone's feedback and everything. So we really appreciate you donating your time on Friday evening when you could be out doing anything else, and you have chosen to spend it with us. So big thank you to everybody. Also wanted to say a very big thank you to Shokunin, who's the executive producer of our show, and also to the other patrons of our show. We really appreciate your support. We're working on a fun new art project to coincide with the Born to Be Wild theme, but with the new Death Knight stuff, and it should be a lot of fun once it's finished. If you are interested in supporting us, you can like, comment, subscribe to our stuff on YouTube. You can leave feedback on any of the podcast apps, iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever your podcast platform of choice is. If you're somebody who uses Twitch, we do have emotes that you can unlock for free just by following. There are some additional ones that you can get by subscribing, which is free if you've got Amazon Prime. If you're interested in checking out more of our content, our past stuff, other lore episodes, or any merch or anything like that, we do have a website. It's borntobewildhs.com, and links to all of that stuff is there. Finally, we do have a Discord server if you're interested in interacting with any of us personally that you can join. It's free, it's fun, and with the potential impending destruction of Twitter, where we all hang out, Discord may be the good place to interact with us. So links to the Discord channel, the YouTube, all of our past lore episodes and other archive stuff, the merch shop, it's all online at our website, borntobewildhs.com. Again, borntobewildhs.com. All right, that's the housekeeping. So we do have some news to go over tonight that we'll hit before we jump into the lore segment, which will be the bulk of our show, but did want to go through a couple of things. So last week I was kind of lamenting that I hadn't had much time to play.
Wait, Nate, we don't have the button, so I just want to do something.
Welcome to the news. The
No!
news is so good.
Oh, special live version.
Oh,
It's
man,
so good.
Welcome to
That's it. I'm canceling. I stopped recording. Streams down. We're done.
It's gonna be stuck in your head all night.
It is. That was a very convincing performance, Hydra. So, speaking about the news, so yeah, Nate, you're the subject matter of news item number 1.
Yeah. So last week I was kind of lamenting that I didn't have a lot of time to play Hearthstone. I had been kind of neglecting the game. I've had my attention diverted a little bit between a Marvel Snap and God of War, and I was my Hearthstone time had been spent doing the limited time stuff. So I was doing the Battlegrounds event. I was doing the Mercenaries Rattlegore stuff, and anyways, I got around to hitting Legend over the weekend. I used Fish Rogue. I tried using Secret Mage, and it just was not working for me. I did okay, but I didn't want to tank my rank. And I played one game of Even Shaman and I lost, and I was like, nope, not happening. And I switched over to Fish Rogue and rode it, 73% to Legend, 22 and 8. It was great. I came in at rank 105, and I had a pretty smooth ride. I did it all in one sitting. It was over last weekend, and it was great.
Well done.
Thank you. I got the coveted neon retweet, and it's always a pleasure.
You also got we both you and I got the top decks bump this month too.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, I was very excited about that, and it's always fun. I was gonna say I can't take credit for the list. I got it from Tempo Storm. I keep saying that every time they'll retweet like, oh.
I think at this point the version that you're running, although people run the craziest things in this deck, is kind of the stock list from like when it was like seeing a lot of play. And my recommendation is, guys, look in the mirror, take a good look at yourself, and ask yourself, do you want to be that guy that plays Starfish? Are you that guy that wants to play Eater of Secrets? Are you that guy that wants to play Cobalt Sticky Fingers?
I think there's a Starfish enjoyer in our chat right now.
I mean, Sticky Fingers is fun.
Not anymore.
That's funny.
The stock list is just super solid.
I think so. Early on we were not running Cutlass Courier because it felt a little bit clunky, but it seems good. Um, it somebody had mentioned, like somebody had commented on one of the tweets how like, oh, it's a 30 card list. I was like, yeah.
It's a 30 card list. Perish the thought.
Right? And I was like, I think where you and I, Blue, really see eye to eye is what I'm looking for when I play. I want consistency. I'm not a fan of one ofs.
Yeah.
And I know with the legendaries, you can, so it's got two legendaries. It's got Mr. Smite and it's got patches. Aside from that, it's all two of everything. And I like it because of the consistency. This is super consistent and it was fast. Like this climb was really fast, and I really appreciate that consistency. It's
Short games, win fast, lose fast.
right. I mean, that's pretty much how it works, though. The tricky piece here, I think I had three final legend bosses. I went on I had a 12-game win streak, which was cool. I had already unlocked that achievement a while back. But I got the 12 game win streak again this time, which was really cool. And then hit kind of a little bump right at the very end, but it was fine. And yeah, no, I had an enjoyable time, and I was playing a lot. My son started playing, was like, "Oh, I want to play. Can you coach me?" And so I had asked, like, "Are you for real? Like, you serious? You want to like learn? Because I can teach you if you want to learn." And he's like, "Yeah. What do you want to play? I want to play Secret Mage." Okay, so we looked at his cards and we put together a deck based on what he had, and I did a little write up of the synergies between the cards and when to play them and when not to and what to look for and the different combos and stuff like that. And I wanted to avoid, like, I wasn't just telling him what to play, like play this, then play this, then play this. It was like, hey, let's look at what they're playing. Let's look at our options. We have, 2 mana. What could you play with that? What do you see here? And we did that for a couple of days. He had a 19-game win streak, which was phenomenal. I can't even believe it. He was so upset because he lost game 20, and it was unwinnable. It was like a Reno Shutterwalk Shaman that went on this infinite loop, and
I hate those so much.
I think he was fatiguing because he had Aluneth, and it's not gonna happen, and had to kind of learn that difficult lesson. I put up that Picard picture that sometimes you can do everything right and still lose. That's not, that's just life. I'm butchering the quote, but you know what I mean? What is it?
We know the one you mean.
It's right here in my, okay. It is possible to commit no mistakes and still lose. That is not a weakness. That is life. There you go. Captain Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek: The Next Generation. Life lessons there, but we had a great time. He's playing right now. So his previous best was like gold 10 or something. I don't remember. He just messaged me in Discord. He just hit Diamond 7 with no star bonus. It's crazy. And so I'm very proud dad moment over here. So we'll be playing more Hearthstone this weekend, but I'm excited. Very, very fun. And so yeah, we've been doing a lot of Hearthstone in my family over the past week.
That's really cool. While you were coaching your son, Ben from work was coaching me.
Rockwell, you playing some like Mechathune, or I know
we were playing
Ben's
Mechathune
lately.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. We went 5-2 when we were playing, and actually one of the wins was with the completely wrong list that Ben says he doesn't play anymore. I queued the wrong one, but we won with it, so it was fine.
Hey.
Yeah, he's the Mechathune master. I still need more reps with the deck. It's not the traditional Mechathune that I'm used to, so I'm going to be playing it some more.
I love Ben. Ben has a lot of unconventional takes on Hearthstone, and I like that. I think that it's a unique perspective, and I don't know. It's interesting because I'm sure whatever his list is different than whatever you'll find on Tempo Storm.
Yeah,
but he's one of the best players that is in the game. So rock and roll. I love doing co-ops. It's always so much more fun climbing with other people just to make the trip more enjoyable. So awesome.
Ben gets away with a lot being Ben. You wouldn't catch me dead playing Mechathune Lock Although even when it was probably a good deck, I wouldn't be playing it anyways. I did what you did, Nate. One day, start to finish, I did even Shaman. Same list, a homogenous 30, just sailed. Sometimes you just want to turn your brain off.
You sailed with Pirate Rogue?
No, Nate sailed with Pyro. I sailed with Barber Pole Shaman.
You had a couple tech cards though, yeah, right? You were using the Colt Neophyte?
Yeah, I ran the 30 that NHL and Corb recommended, and I ran the Cult Neophytes because in 11X, especially at the beginning of the month, everyone was playing the new hotness, which is the Miracle Rogue, the one that's not running Maestra.
Oh.
It runs like mailbox dancers and stuff. Basically, they just play a bunch of like giant minions on turn 3 and turn 4 and just knock you over. So Cult Neophyte's really good because even just that little stall will completely throw their game plan. And in my climb, I went 9-0 versus Rogue. To be fair, it was a mix of Pillager, Pirate, and Miracle. Didn't matter. The Neophytes were clutch in all of them. Even the Pirate, just because they can't Passage, they can't Cutlass, they can't. It still puts a little wrinkle in their game plan. So I think at this point I wouldn't run the Neophytes because I think Rogue's kind of had its day. But knowing your meta can really help get you over the hump.
I actually struggled against even Shaman. It's hard as the Pirate Rogue. I loved seeing Rogue because they were building like you've got a 25-25 Edwin, and then I just smash you in the face for 15 and like. Okay.
The even Shaman game plan against Pirate Rogue is very nuanced and complicated, so I'll try and break it down for your audience, Nate, so that they too can learn the deep mysteries of beating Pirate Rogue with even Shaman. Alright, here it is. If you have a card in your hand that's not Chisel, throw it back until you get Chisel. You play Chisel against Pirate Rogue on curve, they lose. If you play against Pirate Rogue and you don't have Chisel, you may still win, but it will not be a foregone conclusion. I like foregone conclusions. I find that people don't mulligan for Chisel aggressively enough. The only card that I'd maybe keep if I don't get the Chisel is maybe Thing from Below. And even then, there were times where I'd have a good hand and there's no Chisel in it, and I was encouraged to chuck it. So, anyways, that's the deep mystery of mastering even Shaman.
Right? I remember doing the co-op with 6J, and Jay was saying, like, we were doing mulligan strategies. Is it Chisel? No. Throw it back. Like, there you go. There's the mulligan strategy. And, sailed to Legend that month with even Shaman. So, that's the strategy. It's a very good card. I think it's underwhelming to look at until you've started playing with it. Like, it's really good. So...
I just want to remark before we move on to our next topic that there was a comment made in chat that should forever be immortalized. For shizzle for the chisel.
Or shizzle for the chisel.
Thank you, Ari.
Wow.
All right, so moving right along. Had some show matches this week, showcasing some of the new cards. So Nate, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I don't know anything about it because they streamed it while I was at work, and they never posted it to YouTube. So, so 2 days this week, they had the March of the Lich King Death Knight showcase matches where they had streamers playing against each other. I believe it was some casting by Slissa and Garrett from the Angry Chicken, right? And I don't know. They haven't posted them on YouTube. I'm super bummed about that because Sheep found the Twitch VODs, and they're available.
Like 7 hours long or something like that.
Yeah.
For the whole VOD.
They were streaming that stuff all day, man.
Did you watch any of it, Goliath?
More like I put it in the background and on mute in order to try to get the free packs. But unfortunately, I didn't actually end up getting them because apparently the Twitch kept pausing on me when I was in another window. So
oh no.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. So I didn't actually get any free packs, unfortunately. But I tried.
I may check out the VODs, but I Well, before I move on, like this actually, I'm gonna skip the next news thing and go to the next one because it segues well. But like, did anyone else? Did you watch them at all?
I
No.
didn't. It was during the work day, and I tried at night when I got home and I saw the length of the VOD. I
No.
scrolled through it and I was like, I don't know, until somebody breaks it up into highlights, not gonna watch it,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Just
When it's
check the website for the card reveals at that point, I mean, the reason why, because they're revealing cards at the same time, it's kind of a semi-new way of revealing it. And that's why you would watch it mainly, is for the tension of, oh, when are we going to get to see a new card? But if it's after the stream is over, they've posted them to the website and, like the community sites have them up. So just look there. It doesn't take 7 hours.
Yeah, I just wanted to see, like, it's fun to hear the voice lines and watch the animations and see the interactions and stuff. Like, it
Fair.
seemed cool. I was disappointed that it hasn't made its way to YouTube, although I'm sure it probably will at some point. If it really is like 7, 8 hours long per day, then they probably need to edit them into segments. I don't know. Maybe they won't at all. I'm not sure. What I heard, and again, they did these during the normal like 8 to 5 work day during the week, and so I couldn't watch. But what I heard overwhelmingly was that Renathal and Denathrius like stole the show.
Oh.
Denathrius in particular, that like people were making 40 card decks. Denathrius was like the cards were underwhelming, but Denathrius was winning games, and
Oh no.
Hmm.
so there's a tweet here from Aleko from the Hearthstone design team. It says, I've gotten a lot of questions about Renathal and Daddy D, meaning Denathrius, over the past couple of days, so I just want to reiterate what Celestalon is saying here. Don't worry, Final Design has their eyes on both these cards. So Celestalon, let me back up. This was like a retweet. So Celestalon, also from the Hearthstone dev team, says, when you're in this no aggro, mega greedy micro meta, it's a perfect storm for Denathrius being strong. Denathrius may be in need of a nerf anyway. I don't see the rest of the tweet, but this is stemming from these showcase matches. So then the other part of the tweet here says that we think this event's limited card pool probably skewed the power levels of these two cards, but we also want to make sure the new expansion launch is fresh and interesting. We made sure to have a balance change window available shortly after expansion launch, and we're ready to make immediate adjustments to these cards or any others if need be. What I don't like here, and I responded, and some people responded to me, but my question was, is the thought to nerf the card not because it's overpowered, but because you don't want it to be played when the new set comes out? Because I don't really like that philosophy. Like,
So, I think we're all reading a little bit too much into this because these cards evoke a lot of passion. I mean, I spent the first part of September trying to get, or October, whenever the set came out, hashtag Renathal to trend.
right?
Um,
Sorry, did you say invoke, by the way?
did I? I don't know. Anyways,
Descent of Dragons.
Did you just have the play 30 invoke, or that's infused cards? Never mind.
Oh,
Or
infuse. Yeah, I mean
Infuse.
infuse.
So I
I was
think
trying to be funny and it failed.
so I think that the difference between Baku Gen and Denathrius is that people like Denathrius. Nobody liked Baku and Gen. And so a lot of people really like the card, and I think they're trying to like have their cake and eat it too. They're trying to keep it in the game because people like it, but they also don't want it to be dominating because that will be boring. Like it's not that they want to sell more cards, which don't get me wrong, they do. But think about sets like Rastikon's Rumble being the most famous one, or the Grand Tournament. Like, nobody wants to get a new set and nothing be playable, right? So you have a fine line to balance. I want to go back, though, to the original Celestalon tweet, because I think they're pretending something very important here. When you're in a no aggro, mega greedy micro meta, not so micro, but I will agree that there was no aggro and it was giga greedy. So perhaps they're hoping to fix this by introducing very tuned.
patches on a hero power is
Yeah, like it's looking like the aggro is going to be coming back, and maybe that'll be enough to like keep Denathrius in check. Because as much as I groan and moan about Denathrius and Wild, I mean, look, Nate, you played Aggro Rogue, which is a very set deck that like has limited damage output, and you were knocking over those 40 health heroes just fine. If Aggro's got game, then the extra 10 health just becomes another thing that you have to work into your game plan. So I don't know. Will they nerf it? I think they're gonna do what they say. Just keep an eye on it, but I don't think it's. I guess in conclusion, TLDR, they're not doing this out of any malfeasance or like nefarious scheme. If anything, it's wishful thinking and incompetence, which I don't know if that's better. Maybe that's a little bit harsh, but I think the intentions are good, and I think that's important. They want the new set to be relevant, they want it to be exciting, and they don't want it to be dominated by the last set's card. And I think everyone can agree that that's reasonable, right? The problem is that there's so much goodwill that's been lost over the last little while that one would be forgiven of kind of jumping to a more glass half empty.
Is that a reason to nerf a card though? Because we don't want you guys to play it so much? Like,
I have a 2 cents I'd like to put in on that point. Actually, coming at things from a very different perspective than you guys. I think, but for me, when I play a legendary card, I like that card to feel legendary, especially if it's a character that, me coming from the lore perspective, that I know existing the story, and especially when they do a good job at marrying the card's effects with like the character's powers or something. And Denathrius in particular feels very fitting. They did an amazing job with that, partly because they invented a whole new keyword that fit the theme of the set and everything. When they have nerfs like this, that can meddle with that marriage of the feeling of that satisfaction when you play that legendary card. We all know not all legendary cards feel amazing when you play them. Sometimes you kind of wonder why they're legendary. But ones like Denathrius really hit the ball out of the park for me. And I really don't want that taken away, to be perfectly honest. It meddles with the a large chunk of the fun. And I'm sure there are probably other people who feel like I do. I can't be the single original in the world who plays Hearthstone this way. My guess is most of them just are not, on social media a ton.
Well, pretty soon.
That's a really good point. Thinking back to when I was newer in the game and I didn't have all the cards that I have now, and I opened a legendary, and you're like, yes, I got it. Like, and I can't wait to slam this card. And like that feeling, that's really good. I really appreciate you saying that, because it makes me, really think about those times where I was very excited. Like, I opened that, I earned that card, I got it. I was so excited when I opened it. And I finally built that deck. And then sometimes when they nerf things, your deck can be gone, right?
Yeah,
but unfortunately, fortunately, I should say, this is the type of card that you can kind of throw in sort of any deck. So it's not like a class legendary or whatever, but yeah.
And you don't really slam it. It kind of does its little dance at the beginning.
Well, and honestly, I think that the reason that neither of these two cards got nerfed yet is because, kind of like Goliath was saying, they're so iconic to this set. Like, Renathal and Denathrius are the theme for Castle Nathria. Like, if you nerf them, like, it spoils the theme of the whole set. But once the new set comes out, like, they're not in the spotlight anymore. So maybe it's more agreeable to do that then. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've lost to, like, Brand Denathrius, or whatever it was, and been all upset.
So what you're saying is that it's far easier to assassinate someone in the shadows.
I think what Nate's trying to say is everybody thinks they want to control meta until they actually get one.
Yeah. Especially as a aggro noob player, there's nothing like getting a 40 card opponent down to 1 health, and they brand Denathrius and kill you from full health. It's like, oh, That was fun.
Well, even in
So
standard, you wouldn't even get them to 1 health, but I digress. So it'll be interesting to see what they do here. I think that the big difference between Bakugan and this is that this was a lot more of a, I don't want to say it was a success, but in terms of design or not, but in terms of like capturing the imagination of gamers and players, like this is, people love their 40 card greed piles. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah.
people
Well, and
like to express their creativity through deck building. It's kind of hard to do that in Hearthstone. You got the 30 card cap and the two ofs, right? Unlike Magic or
Mhm.
Pokemon, where you've got like the 60 card decks twice as big. And this kind of
yeah.
opens up that space, and people really took to it. And so you even see in many cases play rates higher than win rates would inform. So it kind of goes back to that argument, which we probably don't want to go down that rabbit hole tonight, where do you nerf based on feels or raw power or both or none?
Yeah.
And I'll just say this. They are in a tough spot. Because if I were them, I would want people to enjoy the new cards and not re-experience the same thing they experienced in Castle Nathria. If that means, unfortunately, in Standard's case, they're going to have to do something about Denathrius, they're going to have a choice. Do they rotate it early? One of the replies you got, Nate, was Hat basically saying they've done that 4 times, 2 of which were really noticeable. It kind of would be breaking with past precedent, especially when you'd be just, unfortunately, the reality is that you take the card out of Standard, less people are going to play it in Wild than they would if you kept it in a diminished state in Standard. So it's kind of like
Yeah.
a tough one, right?
I see both sides of the argument. I guess what my feeling is like if you're gonna nerf it because it's a power level outlier. But if they're nerfing it for the sole reason of we don't want people to play it so much because too many people are playing it, like that seems like a bad reason to me.
So what I'm
But
hearing you say then is hashtag unnerf raid the docs. All right,
yeah, and
Ah!
and give Patch's charge back while you're at it.
put patches
Um,
back in charge.
And put Demon Seed back in Wild.
Nope.
Well, it's funny.
No.
I am really
Wait a
excited to
minute, wait a
see.
minute.
I'm
Oh,
really
is
excited
that
to
not
see.
the direction we were going in?
Well, they said after it rotates, they're gonna bring it back, and that's coming up this spring. So hold on to your butts. It'll be kind of excited to see what they're gonna do. Yeah.
That's great. All right. Well, we could go around in circles on this all night, but let's talk about some lore. There's one last thing that I want to touch on real quick, and I think we're going to get into it more next week. But some interesting news from a contract perspective of all things. Blizzard and NetEase suspending game services in China. And so essentially what this means is like Blizzard properties, so your Hearthstone, World of Warcraft,
Everything
whatever
but
other
Diablo
Blizzard,
Immortal.
of course.
Well, they had a
Uh,
separate
was-
agreement with NetEase on that. That's why.
Oh, so NetEase is like a big internet service provider, right?
It's a Chinese company, so the way, not to go too deep into this because I think you're going to cover this next week, but you can't just say, "Hey, I want to start selling my stuff in China." Like it's not like France or Singapore. You have to partner with a Chinese company in order to sell your goods. And in game case, you've got a couple choices, Tencent and NetEase being the main ones. So Blizzard wants to sell their IP in China. They have to have a partner. Their partner was NetEase. I don't know what happened. You thought, one would think that they were very much in lockstep because they co-developed Diablo Immortal. But I guess there was a disagreement. There was some drama. They kind of said that they were being bullied by Blizzard. I mean, who's to say? But yeah, all the services are going dark. So
Yeah, and the reason why I think that this is important to bring up, particularly on a Wild podcast, is that the China servers, like by far and away the largest Wild population of any server. I mean, when we joke like here in NA, at the end of any month, like how many people in Legend, Schmoopy, you would know because you've done the census, like 4,000 maybe.
4,000, 5,000 tops on a busy month. About
Right?
8 or 9 maybe in EU. And
In
then-
China, what are you at, 20,000, 40,000? Like it's insane, right?
Yeah, it's
I mean,
crazy.
and we joke a lot because I think especially you and I like these very consistent lists, and the lists coming out of the China server are like
They're very
they're
creative.
wacky.
No, they're creative, Nate. Let's not let our biases inform our opinion on their janky decks. I mean, creative decks.
I love them. I will tell you, I think one of my earliest I love the Chinese deck list. They're very creative. I am not a big fan of like one-ofs and decks, but they have discovered so many different synergies and combos and things that you wouldn't think of. Like they're very creative, and I enjoy that.
Miracle Rogue's the latest example. I mean, they had the perfect 30. We adopted their 30. The not the current one, which is a bit of an iteration, but the Maestro one with the Knolls. Like that was. That was from a Chinese meta report. I mean, so there's a lot of when you got that many people, there's going to be a talented player base, and in a talented player base, you're going to get innovation. And it's kind of sad to see that go. They said something that the partnerships counted for like less than 3% of their total revenue, which is kind of an interesting kind of side comment because it's like it seemed like NetEase as the partner, which exists by design to basically be the middleman and skim, was maybe skimming more than they like. So think about it. 10 times the player base, 3% of the revenue. Something doesn't add up, right? So, but who knows if that's like, I think like they're kind of pointing fingers at each other, and who's to say, you know? I mean, like as much as we might be inclined to take Blizzard Activision's word for it, there have been a lot of, areas where one would question, there's a trust issue there a little bit. So, but who knows? Like I think that they're belligerents, right? There's no protagonist and antagonist. So,
here's the crazy piece, right? So the way that digital IPs work, right, is you don't own the cards. Like you have a license to the cards. Like you open it's not like physical Magic or cards or whatever, like where you open a pack and you own the physical item. Here, like you're adding things to your collection, but you don't own it. Like you have a license to it, and they revoke the license, like your collection is gone. Bye bye. And that's it. And the way that Blizzard has these accounts set up, right, is that they don't transfer across regions. And so if I have an account in NA that's a full collection, and then I go make an EU account or I log into EU, like I got no cards. And so for all of these players from China, like, cool, I can go make an NA account or an EU account or whatever, but then you've got no cards. Like, I would be livid.
Even then, you're not supposed to. Like, you'd have to use a VPN, and like it's kind of like not like.
Well, I'm sure they have other regulations.
It's not technically. Let's say it's a gray area legally, but even still, even if it wasn't, you're right, and it's an important thing to keep in mind. Like we've had our collections in many cases going on 10 years. It kind of feels like yours to have it like snatched away.
Right. Well, and I mean, especially it's tricky because I will buy, insert whale noises, but like I buy the bundles and the card backs and the various hero portraits and all that stuff. And that's when I hear about people that are like using bots or cheating or whatever, like, is it worth it to risk like losing your whole collection over something dumb? But like they just decide, well, we don't have a contract with NetEase anymore, so your collection is gone. Like, wow. It's just wow. I don't really know what else to say. Our buddy Schmoopy Daddy spends a lot of time with the Chinese meta report and some of the players, and I think wants to talk more about it in depth. He was going to put some stuff together and send it over, and I'm trying to convince him just to come on the show and talk about it. And we've got some lore to talk about tonight, but I just wanted to bring it up because it was timely and just like, wow, this is a kind of a big deal. So we'll see what happens with it. I mean, the other piece, as we've seen, like Spider-Man is a good example, right? I think sometimes, not that this is going to happen here, but companies will like play chicken with contract stuff, and they can say like, "Hey, we're going to terminate our contract. We're not going to renew our contract," and then somebody will be like, they'll make some accommodations or make a new contract or whatever. It's crazy to think a country as large as China, it's just Blizzard just, we're not going to have our IPs there anymore. Like, what?
Well, I think that it really stems from the fact that, like, I mean, I don't want to get political here, but they have a very different political system than we
That's
have
true.
in North America, and it's not even about like democracy, communism, like the fact that they've got, that they view that they're protecting their own interests by forcing outside companies to partner. And hey, we do that too in North America as well. Maybe not with like entertainment assets, but I mean, like, for example, if China wants to come to Canada and mine copper, they've got to partner with a Canadian mining firm to do that. They just don't come and dig it up themselves. I know it's a very different thing, and you have trouble equivocating, but it makes it difficult to do business, and it's tough. Like there was that whole drama about the Hearthstone esports celebs not getting paid for that Chinese tournament. There was a lot of chatter on Twitter, and like, they're like, are we not going to get paid now because like they're not doing business anymore? And then someone kind of jumped in and said, well, if you know anything about the way the legal system works, etc., you're just never going to get paid at all. So it has nothing to do with this. It's just like, even if you won, that doesn't, it's just a different world. So I think that'll be a really fascinating topic to hear you guys do deep dive on, and I'll be watching in great anticipation. But I will use my executive privilege of controlling OBS to get us on to why we're really here tonight.
Yes.
Something a little bit more entertaining, a little bit lighter. Our lore. So why don't we, really bad segue, but just wanted to keep us honest with time. Why don't we go ahead and dive right in and talk a little bit about one of the most controversial characters in the Hearthstone and maybe the broader WoW. I don't know if Yogg was controversial in WoW, but he's certainly controversial in Hearthstone. Learning a little bit
Depends
more.
what you mean by controversial.
Well, okay. Well, that might be a good segue to have you start educating us, Goliath.
That's great.
Let's
Well,
do
let me one very, very brief piece of housekeeping before we start. This is where I will always say, for those of you listening to the audio version of this podcast, that's great, but I strongly suggest that you watch this segment on YouTube, either this episode or we will record this and post it separately as a lore, just self-contained episode, because we have visuals on the screen going along with all of the story. So as we're talking about a place or a character or an event, there will be pictures on the screen, either from World of Warcraft or the art books or Hearthstone or all of the above. And at least for me personally, it's really fun to be able to see the visuals while we're hearing about the story, and so I strongly recommend that you try to watch the video version of this segment if possible. And one other note is that this is the third part in our series of the lore episodes of the Old Gods. So in the past, we've already covered Yogg-Saron, we've already covered N'Zoth. If you're interested in watching those lore episodes, if you go to our website, there's a special link for lore episodes, and we've got direct links to those, and you can watch those independently. It's a really fun series. And so, all right, housekeeping is done. Let me pass things back over to Goliath, and you can walk us through the lore of Yogg-Saron.
Okay. So, as is always the case when we are dealing with a story involving the old gods, we of course go way, 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 way back, etc., and talk about the origins of different things. You may recall that for Yogg-Saron, we delved into a lot the battle of the Titans and the Titan forged creatures that they made in order to fight against the old gods, and how Yogg-Saron getting ripped out literally created like the big magic well landmark called the Well of Eternity. When we talk about N'Zoth, we talked about the creation of a whole new mutated race of the Naga, and about how he had an influence on Deathwing and caused a whole cataclysm and stuff. Well, today, talking about Yogg-Saron, we are going to go over the origins of a huge amount of races that exist within this world of Azeroth. We're talking humans, dwarves, gnome, Mogu, Tol'vir, giants. All of them. This is the story of where they come from, how they came to be. So make major lore setting right here.
This is also, I just want to interject that, and we'll get to it in a minute, but I've been replaying God of War at the remake, and it's super heavy on like Norse mythology, and they like borrow super heavily here. So when we get into like Thor and Loki and Odin and all of that, it's very fun. So I'm excited. I'm excited.
Yes, that's another thing. So, a large part of this story is going to happen in the continent of Northrend, which happens to also be the setting of most things involving the Lich King, which is kind of a fun little excuse for us to be having this episode right now with the March of the Lich King set coming up soon. But so getting to our origin part here, we're going to return way back to the time of the Black Empire, which is essentially what we refer to the time where the old gods ruled everything, and in a dark primordial time in Azeroth's history. The elemental lords were enslaved and serving the old gods, and they were squirting out all of their little insect servants and the facelets.
Squirting out.
Well, no, literally, if you recall, those creatures are literally excreted from their bodies. It's really gross, honestly, but that's how they came to be. Yogg-Saron is all known by a few different monikers. Some is referred to as the God of Death, which of course we know from his voice lines when you play the card, though not a literal god of death in the sense like that the jailer would be, because he's actually in the Shadowlands and stuff. He's also known as like the Beast of 1,000 Maws and a lot of various things like that. But Yogg-Saron was up in kind of the very northern part back when all of Kalimdor was one single continent. So what you need to remember is that in the modern period where we have the game, things are all split into different continents. Way back then, it was a Pangea-like conglomerate here. So we have our little map. You can see that there's some different spots pointed out, like the different domains of the different old gods. Yogg-Saron is the one who has the very top of the continent there, the place that would eventually become Northrend. So that's just kind of where you kind of, crashed down from the void and just kind of sunk and buried the roots down. And of course, as we've discussed previously, the whole point of the old gods is that they're trying to worm their tendrils down to the very core of the world in order to corrupt the world soul at the center of it, because then you get a dark titan who can destroy all of reality. That's basically their purpose. And
sounds benign.
Yes, it's you just put that as the mission statement for a company. I'm sure there'll be no problems whatsoever. But so when the Titans came along and discovered the world soul, and they realized that we need to get rid of these old gods, they do the whole thing yanking out Yasharaj, and they realize that causes a lot of damage to the world. So the Titan Keepers that they created, who are essentially these living metal beings that they infuse with some of their own power, are waging the war for them, and they battle the old gods and their minions and build prisons for them. Yogg-Saron was actually the last one that they were fighting and was really challenging for them. According to the Chronicle book, it was only through the heroism of the Titan Forge known as Odin, who is spelt with a Y, therefore, non-trademark infringement here. I love his design. Basically, because he's metal, but they wanted to give him a beard. There's basically like a flowing, molten beard that Odin has. It's crazy. And basically, he was able to rally him because Yogg-Saron had some particularly powerful lieutenants, these powerful old god minions known as the Cathraxi, who are kind of like, you know how we have those the bug-like ones like the Akir and Karaji and all that stuff. We have lots of cards with those critters in it. Think really super big version. In fact, if you play Battlegrounds, the card Mithrax, I believe it has one of those menagerie type of abilities, if I remember correctly. That is more of a Cathraxi type, if I remember correctly. So basically, with these super powerful soldiers, generals, lieutenants, whatever you want to call them, that Yogg-Saron has, they are throwing all sorts of panic and madness and confusion and illusion into the armies of the Titan Forge. But Odin is able to convince another Titan Forge by the name of Loken. Again, it is spelled Loken, not Loki, therefore non-trademark infringement. And he is very much about magic. And so he weaves a grand illusion spell so that the Cathraxi, instead of fighting the Titan Forge, they see each other and even Yogg-Saron himself as the enemy. It's kind of like they put the confusion card on him and it swaps it around. So they think that like the friends are foes and the foes are friends. And that's how basically they get them to fight each other. And Odin is able to lead the other Titan Forge to be able to pacify Yogg-Saron. They basically, build the giant prison, clamp down, seal away his magic and stuff. And the prisons were actually designed by a character who we've had a card in the game for a really long time. Well, we've had his head. Mimiron is...
Oh.
Yes, Mimiron is actually a Titan Forged who created he's very like mechanical and knowledgeable, and he designed all of the old god prisons. It's like this massive architecture project there that nullifies their evil magic and influence. And so far everything is good. Old gods get locked away, but there's a lot of damage that's left to the world because they have the whole, Black Empire was ruling the world type of thing. So in order to help the world's soul, the Titan Forge go about to what we refer to as the Ordering of Azeroth, where they're basically kind of cleaning everything up, getting things set up, and they build two important machines, one in the north and one in the south. The one in the north is known as the Forge of Wills. And according to the Chronicle book, it says that it would shape the world soul's budding sentience. Basically, that means that it's helping to stimulate and help it grow. It's feeding it all of its brain food and helping the world soul to be able to, form a consciousness properly. And then down at the bottom of the continent, there is the Forge of Origination, which helps to send rhythms through the earth that regulate the world soul's growing form. So you have one that's about the mind and one that's about like the more physical body that it's going to have eventually. But each of these also has a secondary purpose. The Forge of Wills up in the north has the ability to draw on the magical power to create life. Meanwhile, the Forge of Origination can draw on power for absolute destruction, namely in the event that if the world ever became too corrupted, like, the old gods got out again and were unstoppable, then a signal from the Forge of Origination will wipe out all life on Azeroth completely, just wiping the slate clean.
Wow.
In fact, it is located in what is present-day Uldum, which, of course, we know from the Saviors of Uldum set. And a little aside is the reason Uldum is a desert is because there was a point where the Forge had to be used to stop an invading army that was trying to capture it, and they did it just a little bit, and it wiped out all what was once a jungle and turned it into a desert. So that's just what it has on the tiny setting.
So don't turn it to 11?
Yes. Don't press the big red button that says re-origination. No, that's not good for anyone to do, unless in the most dire circumstances when there's no other option. So those are some kind of like mega construction projects the Titans go about making. And then they decide that while they're at it, they're going to build a nice, cool, like superhero headquarters for themselves, like their own Fortress of Solitude way up that includes Yogg-Saron's prison, the Forge of Wills, and various other projects that they're all working on. It's basically where the Titan Keepers live. And this place is called Ulduar. almost every Titan place starts with an Ul something. There's Old Doom, Ulduar, Old Deer. It's easy to get them mixed up, to be perfectly honest. But this is Ulduar, and this is where they start getting to work using that power of the Forge of Wills to create some other Titan born. They are formed in stone and metal and for a bunch of different purposes. I'm actually going to just read to you directly from the Chronicle with this one paragraph because I think it sums it up quite nicely here. It says, each of the loyal and mighty Titan Forged would play a different role in ordering and protecting the world. The craggy, kind-hearted Earthen would specialize in crafting mountains and carving out the deep places of the world. The clockwork mechanomes, designed by Keeper Miberon, would help build and maintain the Keeper's extraordinary machineries. The stone-skinned Mogu would dig out the myriad rivers and waterways of Azeroth. The task of safeguarding many of the Keeper's holy fall to two different groups of constructs, the iron-skinned Vykrul and the chiseled Tolvir. To shape the environment, the Keepers also conscripted the powerful stone and sea giants. They would roam the breadth of Azeroth, lifting towering mountain ranges and dredging out the fathomless seas. So basically, they created all these guys to be their assistants in designing and customizing the world to be a bit more livable and just kind of shape it into something that was, not Black Empire. And then it was at this point that the Titans, who had previously been kind of overseeing all this, essentially looked down and said, okay, you guys did a good job. Now we have to go back into the reaches of deep space and try to find even more Titans. So we're just going to leave you guys to do the job. Maybe we'll come back someday. We don't know. But keep up the good work. And before they go, they assign a constellar by the name of Algalon to be the watchman watching over the world and will report to them if anything goes wrong. Now, this is a guy who we have in Hearthstone as a battleground hero, and we also have another constellar as a Hearthstone original character with Orion, Mansion Manager. And maybe this will make that card have a little more sense. I believe the devs said when they were designing that character, the idea that he's looking through a bunch of different portals and stuff, kind of keeping an eye on everything. And basically, these are cosmic beings who are kind of, look, they look like constellations. They're named Constellar. They're basically, star-type people. And he's assigned with, keeping an eye on things, which is for Algalon, they wanted to have him keep an eye just on Azeroth, make sure that things are going smoothly. And then when they made Orion, they were basically having him keep an eye on things going on in the Castle Nathria. So that's a little bit of explanation for you right there on that point. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the different Titan Keepers at various points here as they pop up in the story. Because things are going to go well for a couple of, it just described as eons, so an unknown amount of just really, really long time, the type of thing like, to us, it would be a long time, but, to a more cosmic being, it's but a blink of an eye and all that sort of thing right there. So we now get to a period where Yogg-Saron is going to start causing some trouble because he wants out. And he wants to find a way to be able to weaken his jailers. And he's going to find a way to do that by getting a hold of Loken. Big surprise, the guy named after the Norse trickster god who betrays the Aesir and helps to cause Ragnarok is the one who's going to get corrupted. Big surprise here. So essentially, when the Titans left, to go into deep space, they never came back because they got killed by Sargeras, who at this point had started his whole demonic burning legion and was way too powerful for them and basically obliterated them. The Titan spirits kind of beelined right towards Azeroth so that they could find some sort of body to inhabit so they wouldn't just fade out of existence. And so they kind of merged with the Titan Keepers in some way, shape, or form. And this was something that the Titan Keepers felt like a surge of power coming on in them. They think like they're seeing memories that they didn't have that are from the Titans, and they're really confused and they don't know what's going on. They're trying to ask the Titans what's going on here, but obviously they're not getting any answers, and they're all really confused about this. Loken in particular is having some difficulties. He's like really worried. What does all of this mean? Have the Titans abandoned us? What's going on here? And he turns to a Titan forged, a Vicrul by the name of Sif, who is also named after a Norse goddess, of course. Sif happens to be married to Loken's brother, Thorim, who is Thor. Yeah. And he's the guy who has thunder and everything. Yeah, it's not really... I don't even need to explain any of this anymore. It's very self-evident, I'm pretty sure. And so basically he's kind of going to her for comfort. It's as almost like like going to see a therapist, just talking out, man, I don't know what's going on with this Titan stuff, man. Yogg-Saron is able to seize on that thread because Loken and Sif end up having an affair. It becomes, a forbidden relationship and everything because, she's married to his brother. And Yogg-Saron is able to take that and twist it into a dangerous obsession, so much so that Sif is eventually tries to just break it off and say, like, no, we can't just openly proclaim our love right here. It would destroy the unity of the Titan Keepers here. Everybody needs to be united. And Loken, so afraid of, losing something that's important to him, accidentally lashes out and kills her. And now he's like, now I've done it. Thorm's not going to like this. I know what I'll do. I'll hide her body and tell him that his own, that one of the giants killed her. Yeah, that's it. And so Thorim is, as we have in our little image here, which is right from the Chronicle book. I have my copy of it right here. And just such beautiful art in this book.
It's amazing, yeah.
And this is Keeper Thorim discovers the body of his wife Sif, and you can see if you're looking at the image. Yes, he is filled with absolute rage and misery and just all of that stuff, and he goes on this rampage against the giants that he thinks are responsible for killing his wife, because that's what Loken said, and Loken wouldn't lie. And then it's like causing a lot of chaos here. At this point, Yogg-Saron is further getting his hold on Loken, because with everything Loken does, he digs himself deeper into the pit, where if he's found out, he's going to be in even more trouble. And does
Yogg-Saron, because they took away his power or his magic, but he has enough, I guess, to be able to do this?
Yes. See, the thing is that they're living basically in the same house. Is it like Yogg-Saron is down, locked in the basement? So that's one reason, like just physical closeness. It's also just the extreme negative emotions that Loken in particular is feeling right now that make him prone to that, like the little bit of whisper in the air, like, whispers of the old gods. That's mostly all the influence they can have. They try to latch on to people who have some sort of dark or negative quality going on there that they can seize on in a moment of weakness and turn them to their will. At this point, Loken thinks that he's trying to do the right thing. Yogg-Saron literally tricks Loken into thinking that the spirit of Sif is appearing to him and forgives him, says, no, it's all right, but you can't let anyone find about this. So, my husband, who's over there killing the giants, what I want you to do is I want you to actually reprimand him and say he's the one who's causing all of the division among the Titan Keepers. And basically, that's what Loken does. And Thorm gets so depressed that he just goes off into isolation for millennia. He just sits on this big frozen pillar and like doesn't do anything for eons of time until he comes up in Wrath of the Lich King expansion. So yeah, it's that they must have a very different perception of time than we do, because that would be incredibly boring, I think, even if you were really, let's say, that sad for that amount of time.
Just a question going back to the original kind of purpose. You said that the old gods exist to try and destroy reality itself. I can't help but wonder, and I'm sure there's an explanation, what's in it for them? If they're these all-powerful gods and then they destroy reality itself, doesn't that also include themselves as well? What do they get out of what do they get out of accomplishing that?
The old gods are manifestations of the void created by these beings called the Void Lords, who are essentially feed by consuming reality. They want to break into the physical universe, but they are unimaginably powerful creatures. And basically, the old gods are their tiny little project of like, okay, we can push all our power into the physical universe, and they just manage to spurt a few old gods out. A corrupted titan is the only thing that will be able to essentially open the door and let the Void Lords in to consume all of reality. So the old gods are actually, in the grand scheme of things, tiny minions doing the Void Lords' work, just to let them in. It's almost their programming in a certain sense. They would just go back to the void if all of reality was actually destroyed, I suppose. Reality is what they all like. They want to reduce the world to a state of utter chaos and nothingness, because that's what it was before all these pesky titans came around creating things, you know?
Mm-hmm. Okay. They're a means to an end. I did
Yes,
not know
essentially.
Cool.
Yeah, that's it's something that was actually only revealed once the Chronicle books came out. The Old Gods is something that was a very slow burn, mysterious lore that was rolled out bit by bit over the years, and like have it all compiled now and stuff. There's always a bit more being added on. And so jumping back over to our buddy Loken right here, basically the whole thing that Yogg-Saron is getting Loken to do is, while Thorm is having his big giant war, Yogg-Saron, pretending to be Loken's dead girlfriend, convinces him to use the Forge of Wills to create his own army that's going to intervene and stop all these fighting giants and everything. And so he does. But because of all this Yogg-Saron influence, he taints the will. He creates what we refer to as the Curse of Flesh, where all of these beings that were previously stone and metal, and so, they're very hard and durable, they now are creatures of flesh and blood, who are much easier to kill, which is Yogg-Saron's whole thing. It's a severe weakening of your enemy's forces by making them a lot more fragile. The curse is so powerful that it can even influence already existing generations of Titanforged who are already, stone and metal, and it's like a disease where they, if they come in contact with someone with the curse of flesh, then they start to turn into flesh. And this is where we get all of those races from once they become the fleshy versions. The Tolvir, we have versions of stone and flesh that we have in Saviors of Old Doom. The Earthen became the dwarves. The Mechanomes, surprise, became the gnomes. And we have the Mogu. And the Vykrul, actually, some of them just remained as they were. But the Vykrul are actually the ancestors of humans. So this is the humans' origin story in World of Warcraft as well. If we lived in Azeroth, this would be how we came to exist in the grand scheme of things. So ironically, we have Yogg-Saron to thank, but
It's so
he's
funny because you would think about this mythos normally like almost in reverse, right? Where it's like the curse of turning flesh into stone, and this is like the opposite of that, right? So the previous version they're made out of like metal or stone or elemental type constructs, and then turning into flesh is the curse, rather than the opposite. So it's neat. It's a little bit of a deconstruction, I suppose. So I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, really there's three different types of races on Azeroth when you break things down with the way things currently stand at this point in the story and world. There are creatures that evolved naturally from the life force of Azeroth. These mainly include like your trolls and elves, and pretty much any sort of sentient animal race, like a Pandaren or whatnot. They are, in a sense, you might say, the true natives of Azeroth, in the sense that they just come from Azeroth itself. Then you have these beings who originate from something the Titans made in order to help protect the world. Again, your dwarves, your gnomes, your humans, your Mogu, all of that. And then eventually you get creatures like the orcs and the Draenei who just kind of come in and invade or immigrate from other planets entirely. So that's kind of the three basic parts. And this Titan origin is a very large portion of like basically any human-like race that you have, because we all have a common ancestry in that sense. Now, Loken is, as I said, he's digging himself deeper and deeper here. And eventually he realizes that he's been tricked by Yogg-Saron. But he's like, I have to keep going with this, because if the other Titan Keepers find out, then they're going to destroy me here. So I have to, like, yeah, he's trying to cover up everything that he's done. And he's like, I
pot
know.
committed.
Yes, he is committed to this. Um, so he does things like gets a way to seal Odin away inside his place called the Halls of Valor, and so he's like kind of locked away from the world. He actually wages war on several of the other Titan Keepers, and enthralls them to Yogg-Saron's will. And so they're just kind of walking around the halls of Ulduar in sort of a mindless state, not really being able to have like their free will is kind of taken away here. Although Yogg-Saron can't actually get them to aid him directly in any way. That's his power is still very weak. To touch on what you guys were saying a bit earlier, like he can do these little whisper influences here. At this point, Loken is serving him of his own free will because he sees no other option here. But he can't. He doesn't have the power to do the full mind control on all of his jailers. Actually, what one thing that Loken does is, because he is terrified, like, okay, I have these fellow Titan Keepers taken out, but if the Titans themselves come back here, and if that Algalon guy finds out what happens, ooh, they are going to completely destroy me. So I know what I'll do. I'll take these discs here that are recording all of history, and I'll just, lock them away, and I'll try to edit them so it doesn't show any of the naughty things that I did. Loken at this point invents he invents retcons, you might say. He invents revisionist history, trying to write things so that he wasn't really so bad after all. And that there are some various different conflicts, and we won't get into all the stages. It's it takes up a significant chunk of the early part of the Chronicle book, honestly. But all that you really need to know is that eventually all the Curse of Flesh spreads to pretty much all of the Titan Forge in some way, shape, or form. Loken manages to make it so that if he is ever killed, that's going to trigger the Forge of Origination. He's basically like, he has a kill switch, if I die, then everyone goes with me. And he just kind of seals himself inside Ulduar, kicks out all of the flesh-cursed Titanborn, and that is how they just kind of start spreading over the earth and eventually become the races that we know today. One fun fact is that the Titan tier, Titan Keeper tier, is one of the ones who manages to avoid being killed by Loken, and he is leading a group of the refugees of all the Titan ports who've been kicked out south to try to find him a safe haven. Loken hears about this and he gets freaked out. He calls on those Cathraxi that we mentioned earlier. He kind of digs up Yogg-Saron's old generals and resurrects them. And they can tell that Yogg-Saron has some influence on him, so they have no trouble with obeying whatever Loken says. And he's like, go get that Tyr guy. So they do, and Tyr manages to fight them to a standstill. He basically sacrifices himself, kind of releases all of his life force, and that kills all of them. And because of that, the area where he is buried is known as Tyr's Fall, or Tirisfal. Tirisfal Glades, it's often known. And that became the first settling place of essentially the first humans, those Baikrul, who are kind of the ancestors I mentioned earlier. Tyr had a silver hand that was placed over his resting place as a memory of his sacrifice. That very silver hand in that very location and the legend of Tyr eventually be the namesake and inspiration for the Order of the Silver Hand Paladins. So now you also know the origin of the Paladin hero power, in a sense.
Put your face in the light. Yeah, no, I recognize.
Reporting for duty.
That's right. You see the hammer and the silver hand, yeah, and that silver hand is on the emblem and the flag of so your silver hand recruits and all of that. Yeah, it's very cool.
And I'd say that is about the end of the first part of Yogg-Saron's story. At this point, he has essentially,
we did have a little cameo from one of the cards from Galakron's Awakening, right? Varanus.
Oh yes.
And the Frost Giants, some stuff in there.
Yes, as I mentioned, the Giants are basically, they kind of work with the Titan Keepers here. Like Thorum had his whole, he had like a bunch of Storm Giants, and they fought against, because the ones that he thought had killed his wife were all the Ice Giants or Frost Giants, and so that's where those all come in. And of course, we have our Sea Giant card. That was something that we mentioned a bit earlier as well. Yeah, so that's where all that comes in. Varantis is actually a protege who is Thorum's personal steed. So yeah, that's where that card comes in. That is a lore character, basically just kind of being his horse. But it's really neat to have a tie-in. And at this point, Highkeeper Ra is the only Titan Forge that we have as an actual card in Hearthstone. And, he is not even a direct card. He is the result if you manage to do some crazy shenanigans with the Mogu Cultist card from Saviors of Uldum. And I really want more of these characters to end up as, like, really powerful legendaries at some point. Maybe you can do it in the same way, because, Ra is crazy powerful if you actually get him. And it'd be really cool to have things like this for Loken, for Odin, for all of these other ones that we will say maybe just a little bit about, just kind of going through the list to give you an idea of who they are for ones we haven't talked about yet. So, Nate, I'll leave that to you with the slides. Just go down the list and we'll give a couple tidbits about each one if we haven't already.
Okay, so we had Odin already, right? That we talked about. That's Odin, like, Allfather. That's the father of Thor and Loki, right? Highkeeper Ra we just talked about very briefly, and then so there's Highkeeper Ra that you get, like you mentioned, from summoning them from the Mogu Cultists. The next one that I've got here is my brain wants to say Hodor because I watched Game of Thrones.
Hodor.
Hodor.
Yeah.
So. And this is where, and then there's like a subgroup called the Sons of Hodir, which is where the Frost Giants come from. Is that correct?
Yeah. There is a group of giants who, yeah, because he's like infused with all the ice powers and everything. So actually, Loken managed to defeat him by sticking a bunch of fire giants on him that countered his ice powers and weakened him. And then Loken eventually came in, is like, "You serve Yogg-Saron now." And he's like, "Yes, I serve Yogg-Saron now." And that's basically what he did to most of the Titan Keepers. That was kind of their ultimate fate. They're just kind of wandering around. Hody basically just kind of ends up locked in this ice cave inside Ulduar, similar to how Thorum is just like sitting on that ice pillar out in the middle of nowhere, feeling sad for millennia. Hodir is basically just inside this cave inside Uldubar. Basically, he's just waiting until he's ready to be a raid boss.
He's just chilling.
Yes.
But sorry.
Yeah, you might say he's on thin ice, honestly.
Oh boy.
Wow. So we already touched on Tyr. We already talked about Mimron's head. And then the only other one I had was Freya.
Yeah.
I had a question about Freya as well. And Freya would that be Odin's wife, mother of Loken and Thorim?
Well,
or
if
no?
we're going with the original mythology, there was not any particular like family relations. They were all created at the same time. So you might say, in a sense, they're all siblings. So none of these are like now. Some of them might have like Odin has a bit of an all-father role. He was named as the prime designate, so he was kind of like the leader of them all until Loken exiled him and took the title for himself. It's like, "No, I want to be the prime designate." And so Freya, she is actually really crucial because we have Freya to thank for the natural organic life on Azeroth, while all the different Titan Forged and Keepers were doing, the basic shaping, ordering of the world. She was focused on the nurturing of life. She is the one who created the Emerald Dream that Druids tap into. She is the one who helped to foster all of the life in its various different forms, including where all the wild gods come from. So we've talked about wild gods a bit before, like all of those Loa cards from Rastakan's Rumble, basically very powerful animal nature spirits. And she also created Ungoro Crater and a couple other locations that were basically kind of experiment grounds for the Titans to see like where evolution would go. There was one up in Northrend called Sholazar Basin. There was another down in what we call Pandaria, known as the Vale of Eternal Blossoms. Just areas just unusually teeming with life. And she was responsible for all that as well. She basically got beaten up by Loken and enthralled to Yogg-Saron's will, and he basically just had her walk around tending a garden in the middle of Ulduar for until she was ready to be a raid boss. So yeah,
I do have a question though. If we pull back up the artwork for Freya, I was thinking of when this one looked so familiar to me, and the one that I kept thinking of was Amara, Warden of Hope from I think it was this is from Journey to Ungoro, the priest quest line or priest quest.
Yes.
And the artwork looks so similar, and I mean, it's got to be different, right? But gosh,
yes, different characters. But again, because
is this
Amara
a Titanborn as well, though?
Is another Titan Forged, yes.
Oh.
As is like the what's it called? Guardian Predator of Ulduar. What's that one back from the League of Explorers that turns like your stats to 3/3? Like none shall pass.
Yeah. It's
Tareem? Sunkeeper Tareem, the
No,
3/3?
no.
No, we're talking the first one of those.
No, it's a. I was looking at it. Is it?
Oh, Keeper
of Oldemon or something, or Keeper?
Yeah, that's it. That's another example. It's a Titan Forged who is kind of protecting a Titan area.
Keeper of Oldemon is it?
Yeah, because Uldamon is another one of those places that starts with Ul. That is a spot that the Titans made. So yeah, basically anytime you see a large character that looks like they're made of metal or stone in some fashion in a Hearthstone card, that is likely a Titan Forged in some way, shape, or form. And many of them were, almost mass produced in a way, so they have the same basic appearance a lot of the time.
Very cool. All right. Yeah, it all ties together. It's pretty fun. All
So
right.
Yogg-Saron is going to cause a lot more trouble later, but we'll save that for Act 2. Right now, let's have musical intermission.
All right, here's the fun part.
Your fate is bound to me. I am destiny. All will be laid bare.
If I get to know my fate, well, I know you're the Fate Master Yoggy. All I know is casting spells and randomness sure looks like fun. Open up your tentacles, I want some. Mind player goggles, set my sights on you. Our hand of fate will do. And fire with your rod of roasting Yoggy. All I know is casting spells and randomness sure looks like fun. Open up your tentacles, I want some. You spin me right round, so run right round on your wheel, Yoggy, right round. You spin me right round, so run right round on your wheel, Yoggy, right round. If I got to open the box of mystery, and I feel this devouring hunger.
Just a little bit closer.
All I know is casting spells and randomness sure looks like fun. Open up your tentacles, watch out, here I come. You spin me right round, so run right round on your wheel, Yoggy, right round. You spin me right round, so run right round on your wheel, Yoggy, right round. I spin your wheel. I spin your wheel. All I know is casting spells and randomness sure looks like fun. Open up your tentacles, watch out, here I come. You spin me right round, so run right round on your wheel, Yoggy, right round. You spin me right round, so run right round on your wheel, Yoggy, right round. You spin me right round, so run right round on your wheel, Yoggy, right round. You spin me right round, so run right round on your wheel, Yoggy, right round. I spin your right round, so run right round on your wheel, Yoggy, right. I spin your wheel. Right round, so right round, on your wheel, Yoggy, right round.
Got that?
That was awesome.
It's really hard to get the cadence and like the diction to be like on point like that. It's clear that a lot of effort went into its composition and performance. Well done.
Thank
Oh
you.
my god.
Yeah, that was great.
As soon as the chorus came, I couldn't even keep a straight face. I was laughing so hard. That was so good. Yoggy.
Glad you liked it. I had that one kicking around for a while, and I was just like, okay, I can't just waste this. We have to use this on whenever we do the Yogg episode. So
It's perfect.
all right. So resuming back to part 2 of our Yogg lore, we've covered the big basic chunk of story here, but Yogg is responsible for one of the biggest threats to Azeroth, actually, from the Druid angle, because you guys, you've heard of the Emerald Nightmare before, right? I'm sure we've
Rings a
mentioned it
bell.
once or
Yeah.
twice. It appears in a couple cards. Like, I believe there's an Emerald Drake that you can, like, it has a corruptive ability and it becomes like a Nightmare Drake and that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, and we've talked a lot about the Emerald Dream, and Ysera and the cards and stuff that come out of that, and this is, I suppose, like the corrupted Emerald Dream would be the Emerald Nightmare then.
Exactly. So, Yogg-Saron is kind of the reason that this whole thing is going to get started. So, we're getting with just a little bit of background here so that you understand. So we're fast forwarding several millennia at this point, and we're going to touch a bit on that War of the Ancients that happened, that we've talked about a bit before, where the entire world got split into the continents that we know today. After the whole Well of Eternity thing, demons tried to use it as a portal. We talked about this sort of thing pretty extensively in our talk about Zinajari, because that's when it got sunk beneath the sea and all of that. So the thing is that this is a cataclysmic event, like the biggest earthquake that could ever possibly happen on this world. And the Old God prisons are down below the earth and everything. So basically, a side effect of this whole sundering is that those prisons are getting weakened a bit. And suddenly, the old gods find that they can have a bit more power and influence than they did before, which isn't really a good thing. Now, for Yogg-Saron in particular, some of his essence starts leaking out and cropping up. It's this very corruptive substance known as Serenite. And I
pretty
know
gross.
that you guys know the name Serenite.
Chain gang.
Yeah.
How long can this go on?
So essentially,
So-
the Serenite
yeah,
chain gang is they're basically mining Serenite. They're being forced to mine it.
So my understanding is that the Serenite is the blood of Yogg-Saron, right? And then
Yep.
it's like crystallized, and so they're
Mhm.
mining it.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So obviously, this card came back out in Knights of the Frozen Throne, and the flavor that's doing for that is because the Lich King. Because remember, this is now that all the continents are split up, Yogg-Saron is what we now call Northrend, and that's where the Lich King is. Eventually, not at our point in the story, but fast forwarding just a bit to talk about this one card, the Lich King eventually realizes that Serenite has this unique property where it can like destroy both the body and souls of undead creatures. In fact, when Sylvanas, back in our previous episode, when we were talking about Sylvanas and the Maw and all of that, that time where she committed suicide, she very purposely impaled herself on a Serenite spike because that's the only thing that would be able to kill her. But basically, the Lich King had like weapons and war machines, and even his fortress of Icecrown Citadel made out of Serenite. And so the Chain Gang are, the slaves who are being forced to mine it, so we can build stuff out of it. That's their story right there.
I've associated them so much with Shutterwalk that it didn't even like dawn on me that this had anything to do with Yogg. I just
No, the Shutterwalk is entirely Hearthstone original. It is not a creation of Yogg-Saron, unfortunately. Though Yogg is all about madness, and so it could theoretically that it wouldn't be out of place if they decided to retroactively say that was the case. I don't know, but in regards to this, back when the Serenites first popping up here, the Druids, because at this point you have the Night Elves. And the Druids, led by people like Malfurion, who are, working to safeguard the natural state of the world. And they're finding all of the Serenite popping up everywhere. And they're like, we need to do something about this. I know what to do. We will grow these magic trees that will help to counteract it and get rid of all the Serenite here. At this point, the Night Elves are have a big special tree called Nordrasil that is known as the Tree, and it was specifically blessed by the dragons, the dragon aspects like Alexstrasza, Nazdormu, and Ysera, who gave it special properties to keep it safe from corruption, and actually is the reason that the Night Elves had immortality, because Nazdormu did his little time stuff on the tree, and so they get to live forever. And the idea is, hey, we have this really cool magic tree right here. What if we took that, but put it on these spots where the Serenite is growing up, and it'll counteract it because it's so full of life magic that it'll get rid of all this corruption. Some people of the Druid circles are like, hey, that's a great idea. We need to, send this up, put it in through committee, talk with the dragon aspects about it. They did the first one. They know how to get it right. But this one Druid, high-ranking one named Fandrel Staghelm, who we know all the way back from Whispers of the Old Gods. This is long before he was working for them and had the Rage of the Firelands and all that. That's a much later in his own story and not necessarily something we're talking about today. But at this point, he's a druid who's sincerely trying to do his best to heal the world. And he's like, no. I'll tell you what, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than to obtain permission. We can't let this Serenite problem get any further. We need to act now. So he and his followers just secretly, under Malfurion's nose, not asking permission or anything, they just snip a couple saplings off of the world tree and go and plant them in various places.
Fun fact, sorry to interrupt. Anytime someone at work says, ask for forgiveness later, it seldomly ends well. I have a sneaking suspicion that's going to hold true here.
Oh, very much so, honestly. So basically, they plant the trees in a couple different areas, and the biggest one they plant on the biggest Serenite spot, which, unknown to them, happens to be just like right over Yogg-Saron's prison. And basically, like they grow it, and it seems to be going well. They call it Andrasil, which in their Elven language means the snow crown. And
means big tree.
Yo, it's huge. It's like it's one of those trees that's so big it's like a city in and of itself. Similar to the ones that the Night Elves live in. It's basically that same type of magic tree. And it seems to be going well for a couple of decades until the Druids go back to check on it because they've been getting disturbing reports that the generally peaceful races that live in Northrend around the area are all of a sudden getting very violent with each other and committing huge atrocities that are not in their nature at all. And they go, and turns out that you should have gotten the dragons to give it the whole corruption-proof warranty at first, because it was very susceptible because the power with all the Serenite just gave Yogg-Saron the ability to kind of take control of the tree, and the tree is just radiating this corruption and driving everyone in the vicinity absolutely mad. Like literally, it's the madness, the insanity. And so they can't figure out a way to fix it. So they're just like, okay, we're going to have to chop the tree down. And they don't want to do it, but they do. And then it is known as Vordrasil, its name change, which means broken crown. Unfortunately, even though they managed to chop down the tree, and the Serenite was also taken care of, but Yogg-Saron was able to use that tree's connection and the network that it had with the other trees that they planted as a link to the Emerald Dream, because all that life magic that they were channeling to get rid of the Serenites and promote life in the area all came from the Emerald Dream. Because of that, Yogg-Saron is able to get that tiniest bit of influence in Ysera's realm, and has the smallest speck that's the beginning of the Emerald Nightmare. It's to the extent that the network exists where the other old gods now have access to it. So it's actually N'Zoth, as we mentioned back in our N'Zoth episode, that really does the whole growing of the Emerald Nightmare. But Yogg-Saron is the one who got its foot in the door and was able to
Interesting.
give them all the entrance there. And
Teamwork.
all yep. And
Teamwork
all
makes the dream work.
and all because
And nightmare
Fanville
work.
just couldn't follow proper protocol and didn't want to get the dragon warranty on magic trees. The grizzled what's it called again?
The Grizzled Guardian. Is that
Grizzled
because
Guardian.
like it was being driven mad by
Yes, yes. So furbolgs are these bear-like creatures who are related to the wild god Ursoc, and they took up residence in the fallen Vordrasil because they're like, hey, that tree that was corrupted, they chopped it down. Let's go live in that because that nothing bad can happen there. And then they eventually got driven mad by it. So that's kind of where that card comes from. I thought I'd throw that in as well.
And what is there any, I mean, without going too far down a rabbit hole, is there any story behind Fandral Staghelm in relation to Malfurion or any of our other like memorable druid?
Yes. There's an entire book just titled Storm Rage.
Maybe
a part of this.
Maybe an episode for a different night then.
Yes.
Tune in
I'm
next
afraid
time.
that would be far too much of a rabbit hole. But hey, maybe at some point, once we finish the old gods in terms of like the long running, we can do like class episodes or something. And if we ever talk about like the history of druids, that would be a perfect case to explore that story.
Yeah, that'd be fun. All right, so we do have, I think coming up, one of the long forgotten mage legendaries, which I'm really interested to hear the story behind. But and Cho'Gall as well, right? Do we not talk
Right?
about
Yeah,
Cho'Gall,
yeah.
right?
We're talking about Cho'Gall first, actually.
All right.
So, Cho'Gall is the leader of the Twilight's Hammer. They have a long and interesting history, which is essentially that they started as a tribe of orcs on the realm of Draenor, who were particularly susceptible to the power of the void and believed in this thing called the hour of twilight, which is when the void would consume all of reality, and for them that is like the pinnacle, what everything is leading up to, the grand finale of the universe that they want to happen. And Cho'Gall is kind of one of Gul'dan's buddies, actually, who, when they're forming the horde with all of the orcs, he's like, okay, so Cho'Gall, I want you to go and like pretend that you believe in all this void stuff in order to bring them in and get them to join the horde. But Cho'Gall ends up actually becoming a true believer in the power of the void and the hour of twilight. And so when the horde eventually invades Azeroth, he and the tribe sense the power of the old gods right there because they're so attuned to all the dark void magic. They're just like, there are manifestations of void here. We need to seek these guys out. Like, they are chained, and we need to free them so that they can destroy everything, just like it's supposed to happen. They're cray cray. And
What could go wrong?
Yes. And so essentially, they kind of eventually abandon the horde and go about trying to find the different old gods and be able to weaken their prisons. His first stop is actually Cthulhu, who saved the details of that story for our final or Old Gods lore episode when we talk about Cthulhu. But after Cthulhu is eventually defeated, Cho'Gall is like, wow, I did not know the mortal races could defeat an old god. This is problematic. We need to make sure that doesn't happen to this Yogg-Saron guy up in the northern area. So he kind of goes, and they manage to slip past all of the Titan Keepers because Yogg-Saron is like, these guys are welcomed here. Pay no attention to them, my mindless thralls who wander the halls. And Yogg-Saron, his prison gets weakened even further by Cho'Gall doing a lot of, magic, trying to break the wards and stuff. So now his influence is just going crazy. He's now able to take full control over the Titan Keepers, where beforehand he couldn't get them to do anything purposely for him. He's now in full control. They're his puppets. And he tells Loken to reactivate the Forge of Wills and create a new bloodthirsty army of like iron dwarves and giants that are just, crazy for war. And that's going to be part of, our conquering. And so that stuff's all going up on in Northrend. This is discovered eventually during the campaign against the Lich King, when everyone is in Northrend anyway. Bran Bronzebeard, our old buddy from the League of Explorers, he is fascinated by anything with the Titans, because the dwarves eventually kind of realize that they start to uncover their origins as that once they were the Earthen, and they have this connection to the Titans. And so when you have this huge Titan fortress, the Explorer Dwarf, he really wants to check it out to see if there's any secrets to the origin of his people that he can find. And he barely escapes with his life because Yogg-Saron is there, and he goes and runs to the mages of Dalaran. Actually, specifically Ronan, who is the one in charge at the time. So that's another card that we didn't put on a slide, but happens to play into this a little bit. And basically through intermediaries, because the League of Explorers and the Kirin Tor mages of Dalaran are neutral parties between the Alliance and Horde, they're eventually able to kind of get them to work together a little bit, even though they're fighting, because this is, it's the common theme in World of Warcraft of, okay, factions put aside our differences for the larger threats. But we're still going to fight each other a little bit because PvP has to exist. But for the most part, we are also fighting against the same content because it's easier to just make one batch of content for everybody. It's a game first. The game informs the lore. It's very much ruled by the rule of cool and game mechanics. Which is part of what makes it fun and unique, and one reason I like it. But basically, Thorum is someone that you kind of wake out of his stupor a little bit during some questing. Loken is actually the final boss of a dungeon, and he's killed, and then he's like, my death will herald the end of the world. And Bran is like, uh-oh, what does that mean? And so he's going exploring all the Titan stuff to try to find it out. And all of this eventually accumulates in the Ulduar raid, which is one of the most iconic raids for many World of Warcraft players, actually. This is the one where all these Titan Keepers that we've been talking about are raid bosses, and Yogg-Saron is the final raid boss. Cool. The very first raid boss is the Flame Leviathan, which is a creation of Mimorons, actually, and it's basically an automated defense force for Ulduar. So it's not really a sentient being that has much of a story on its own to tell, but this is where it fits in. It is about, I guess, the closest thing to sort of a because they were really leaning into the mech theme for goblins and gnomes when this came out, and looking for something that counted as a legendary mech for mage that was, kind of related to magic a bit. I think this was what they decided fit the best, and can't really argue with it. It's not a card I ever really see used, but
does its effect on the card match anything at all with how the raid boss?
Yes, it does a lot of like flame-throwing type of abilities in its raid boss fight. So yeah, it's when you draw it, it does the damage, the burning stuff. That's basically a reference to one of its mechanics.
Cool.
And so eventually, what happens is by defeating each of the Titan Keepers as a raid boss, you essentially break Yogg-Saron's mind control over them. And so eventually, when you come to the final boss, they are there to aid you. They are basically bolstering you to try to help prevent you falling into madness. And the idea is that Yogg-Saron is so powerful that even with some of the most powerful beings who were literally created to fight against him assisting you, it is something that you are barely holding him back at all. and nothing that mere mortals would be able to handle on their own. There's actually a mechanic in the raid where you can lose control of your character because you go mad, and then your character starts attacking the other raid members, and there's nothing you can do about it because it's the sort of thing Yogg-Saron does. But eventually he is defeated. Still is there, still exists in a sense, but is, kind of fully, locked and sealed away and not really a threat anymore. And that is essentially the last of Yogg-Saron. Eventually, there's like, little bits of his influence that are still creeping up every now and then. So there's always the possibility there could be some sort of further lore development about either a resurgence from Yogg-Saron or back from the dead, or just like some, latent energy or creation of his that returns to be a threat again. Like, they like to leave the door open for things like that. But in general, that is where Yogg-Saron's story ends. He is responsible for a lot of stuff that happened, but unless the writers decide otherwise, he's probably not going to be responsible for anything else.
Did I send you the image, Blue, for I think it's the last one of the Titan Forged like fighting Yogg? It's so cool.
I think this is the one you're referring to.
It's let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so rad. Like, they're huge, and it's hard sometimes to realize, I think, like, just when we see the Hearthstone cards, sometimes like the giants or the Titan Forge or whatever, like, they look small on the card, but then you see the tree next to them, or we talk about it and you're like, oh, it's actually humongous. Yeah. And so you can see the city here with these 3 Titan Forge, like, that's I recognize them from the pictures earlier, right? But you see they're like bashing Yogg down in the middle of the city there, and like, it's just so cool.
It's epic.
Yeah. Now, one last thing for us to mention is we're getting back to that our old constellation buddy Algalon, because after you defeat Yogg-Saron, he's the final boss. But if you go on like the really hard mode, there's a secret extra boss. Because it turns out that, yes, when Loken was killed, that signal got sent up to Algalon that, time to activate that Forge of Reorigination again. It looks like we have to wipe out everything. And basically, he's going down to scout it out and see if that's actually necessary. And he's seeing that, yeah, the old gods are kind of out of control here. I mean, they're literally taking over Titan facilities. Yeah, we probably better activate the Forge here. And he is actually so powerful that fighting against him is futile. What the fight does is he is impressed by the desire of the mortal races of Azeroth to survive. And he finally, like, he's kind of, erased populations before for this very reason on other worlds, but he never really thought about what the people who lived there would think about it. And now he's like, why are you fighting me? It's futile. Even if you kill me, I literally already sent the signal. It's inevitable. But eventually he's like, okay, fine. You guys deserve a chance to try and fight for your own survival. You can try and stop this corruption yourself. We'll find a way. We'll undo the signal. And basically kind of he learns a lesson in the value of free will, and that Yogg-Saron actually had an unwitting effect from the curse of flesh, because turns out when races are rendered far more fragile and mortal, their drive to survive and the amount of things they can complete in their short life that they're driven to do becomes that much stronger. And so while the curse of flesh may have made the mortal races a lot more physically fragile, it's ended up actually strengthening their resolve, and that comes back to bite the old gods, because turns out that we're the ones who take parts in raids, and we're the ones who kill the raid bosses. So I don't know how much things would have changed if the Curse of Flesh hadn't happened, but it resulted in that they're getting defeated anyway.
Breaking the fourth wall, right? Oh no, I'm a raid boss. That means I'm gonna lose.
Unless a cinematic saves you at the end.
There you go.
Keeps you in the story for later. That happens a few times.
That's great. What a great story.
I learned a lot.
Yeah,
The
and I
Curse of
love
Flesh.
everything ties in, even from like way back when. And so these cards, from goblins versus gnomes and all of that, like everything loops back together. Now, I did have one question. We've been at it for a couple hours, and so I don't want to go too far down a rabbit hole. But when I was pulling together images and stuff for this, I saw. So say we have this Curse of Flesh. The gnomes in particular started out as like mechs or whatever, and then turned into like flesh or gnomes. But I saw all of this like in between, where like the humanoid like flesh versions had like mechanical body parts and stuff. Were they like trying to go back or attach machines to themselves, or
You
is there
hit the
like
nail
a
on the head. You're referring to the Mechanomes, who lived
yes?
on the island of Mechagon, uh, which was ruled by King Mechagon. And
Right.
basically, yeah, they were all about attempting to reverse the curse of flesh by becoming cyborgs, essentially. But Mechagon eventually went like fully cuckoo and is like, all flesh must be eradicated. Everyone must become a robot under my command. And so he ends up being a dungeon boss because of
Ah,
that. Um,
rip.
yeah, and the Mechanomes become a playable race. Uh,
Yeah. And what
and
about
there
Mecha
were
Jaraxxus then? Is that just a fun for funsies?
Yeah.
Mecha Jaraxxus is a Hearthstone original thing. The story within Hearthstone behind that, because he came out with Boom Labs, is the idea that after Jaraxxus is defeated, Doctor Boom decided to rebuild and resurrect him with
Ah,
cyborg parts.
Mm.
I'm guessing they're doing a similar alternate version with the new like Draxus or whatever thing that they just released with the new skin. Because you can see Doctor Boom in the background, like.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's in the background of the artwork there. That's
So
great.
I don't know if they decided that this is just two different versions, or if like they have their own continuity within the Hearthstone team of
I
okay, so after he got defeated again as a cyborg, Doctor Boom decided that he would just do a full on monster version of him or
I,
something. I
I
don't
love
know.
I love how they took Dr. Boom, who is like just a boring NPC in WoW when they've done so much with him
Yes.
in Hearthstone.
yeah.
Yeah, Hearthstone really breathed life into him, and it's done that for a couple of other lore characters, like ones like Bran were already significant in a sense, being the leader of a faction you can get reputation with and everything, but like Hearthstone really elevated him to uh, notoriety. Both because he's appeared as a character in several sets, but also just because double battle cry is something a lot of us WoW players want. So, and that happens with a lot of characters. And it's always really interesting for me to see what minor character from WoW might become a major character in Hearthstone at some point.
Absolutely. Well, Goliath, thank you so much again for coming on and telling us the story behind Yogg-Saron. It's very cool, and I really appreciate it. I know a lot of time and energy and effort is put into this, and it's really awesome. So always love having you on.
My pleasure.
Totally
Oh, you know
agree.
what? Before we wrap it up, I have one final question.
Sure thing.
Um, so in Hearthstone proper, right, Yogg-Saron is classically associated with random RNG effects. Spin the wheel of Yogg, play random spells. Like, is there any association there, like within the lore and the character? Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't know with
I believe that it's reaching flavor wise to the concept of the madness of the
Chaos.
complete
yeah, you know what? That makes
unpredictability.
sense. That makes sense because like with N'Zoth, we had talked about like resurrection, right, and bringing back
Mhm.
corrupted, whatever. Okay, so we got that, and with Yasiraj, it was the same, right? Like y- you know, um,
It's a very loose interpretation of the concept of madness.
Yes. Yeah,
well,
like
it's chaos, that's for sure.
yeah, legendaries are a bit of a toss-up. Sometimes it's the effects have a beautiful flavor matchup to a specific thing the character does. Sometimes it's more of a conceptual thing. Sometimes it's just they had a mechanic they wanted to put in and they slap it on this character without any rhyme or reason. I'd say that Gen and Baku fall into that category, honestly. There's
Well, those
nothing
are
so much
yeah.
about
That's
Gen Greymane. There's nothing about like that. They tried to spin it as like he represents order, therefore even numbers. But no, they just they wanted odd and even, and they needed someone to represent it, so they gave it to him.
they've done more thematic, I think, with Gen in Mercenaries,
Yes.
where they can be a little more. They've got some more options.
Hmm.
So anyhow, well, very cool, and I think we touched on it a little bit, but I believe our next lore episode will be for this upcoming
Cthulhu.
set. The
Cthulhu,
Cthulhu.
Cthulhu,
Cthulhu.
right.
Thanks.
Well, so we have one final episode for our lore of the old gods. We still need to touch on Cthulhu, which we have not done yet, and then we'll have to do an upcoming lore episode for the March of the Lich King, just coming out in about 3 weeks or so. A little less than about a
Time
little less than a
flies.
month. Yeah, time sure does fly, and very very excited for it. I don't know what else to say, but I always love these. They're so much fun, and it's just an absolute blast, like going through everything. And yeah, well, thank you all for being here. And yeah, before we sign off for the night, Goliath, you want to share where you've got a bunch of lore articles? We do have all of your past lore episodes posted on our website. If anyone is interested in other lore, we've done a whole bunch of them. They're all listed there on a separate page dedicated to lore. So if you're interested, check those out. But I know Goliath works with Out of Cards and has done a bunch of lore articles and stuff as well. So if you'd like to share, that'd be awesome.
Yes, yes. If anyone would like to read things that I've written about lore previously, and I do have like a massive thing I wrote, I was going like 2 years ago about all the old gods and stuff. So if you want to get like the full story, if you want to get some Cthulhu info before we have the final installment here, you can find like all of that compressed together. We've got things about Illidan, about the origins of dragons, about some trolls and from the Rasticon's Rumble, just like all this different stuff. You can find it at Out of Dot Cards. Look in the Hearthstone lore section. You can find all of the lore guides I have compiled. I have unfortunately not written many new ones this year because life has been really busy for me, but I am planning on doing some major updates with the new cards coming out to both my one about the history of the Scourge and Undead and one that I already had about the history of the Blood Elves, since we're getting a lot of new cards focusing on those guys. So keep your eyes peeled for some update if you want some full story on that and the things that'll be our topics for our next lore episode here on Born to Be Wild.
Love it. All right. Any final words from anybody before we call it a night? Blutrane, you wanna pimp your new Instagram account?
Oh my goodness. So
Let's go.
so Nate's making fun of me here. I mostly interact with folks on Twitter, which I've put into chat. And I also have the same handle on Discord, so if anything were to happen to Twitter, you can find me on Discord. I also just today made an Instagram account because I'm trying to see what am I going to do if I have to stop using Twitter, either by choice or by non-choice. I don't know if it's going to be this. I put the link in here anyways. I had to select L3 instead of B for Blutrane because apparently Blutrane was taken, every other like incarnation of it. But I don't know. Some
That's
folks
very
are
creative. I'm impressed.
It's your loop train.
some people are looking at Mastodon. I didn't set up there. Another one called I don't know, CoCast or something. I don't know. It's gonna be chaos. It's gonna be Yogg madness if Twitter goes away. But Twitter is where I like to interact with folks, and given the opportunity to continue doing so, I would follow me there. I made one post on the Instagram. It might be the only post I ever make. I don't know. We'll see. Right now, I'm just kind of keeping my options open.
I love it.
Nice.
All right, friends. Well, thank you all for being here tonight. Always a pleasure. Join us next week. The plan, as of right now, is to be talking more about what is going on with the Blizzard and the China servers, and dig into that a little bit deeper, and trying to entice Schmoopy Daddy to come on the show, and we'll see if I can guilt trip him into it or not. And no pressure. It's not like it's the day after Thanksgiving or anything like that. So. Anyhow, thank you all, friends, for being here. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week on another new episode of Boar Wild. Wow, butchered that super hard.
Yikes.
Boar to be wild.